Hey folks, tonight you're not curling up with a rom-com. You're clocking in as Egypt's newest sun god intern. From the moment you hiccup in gold leaf swaddling, priests are debating omens, nobles are sniffing for promotions, and a scribe with way too much eyeliner is chiseling your baby burp into eternity. Toys? Forget it. You get a ceremonial crook that's decorative only, please don't chew. Lullabies? Replaced by droning hymns belted out by men who smell like frankincense and midlife crisis. Your toddler playdates are with cousins who double as backup heirs. Each smile basically a background check. Privacy? You sneeze, and the astrologer general files a national weather advisory. By grade school, you're juggling geometry, because pyramids won't build themselves. Holy flashcards. Name all 42 district gods or we flood the Nile. And speech class where one wrong phrase tanks grain prices. Puberty hits and, surprise, wedlock is a family reunion itinerary. Romance equals marrying someone who shares both your surname and your cheekbones. Finally crowned, your trust in 30 lobies of symbolic bling. Glued-on beard, cobra tiara, leopard skin sash. Basically, a furnace with accessories. The people chant your divinity, yet blame you for every mosquito swarm, drought, and suspiciously chewy loaf of bread. Want a day off? Too bad. You've got sunrise accountability, cattle blessing duty, and a nightly audit of your own dreams. Classified level, apocalypse. Paranoia becomes cardio. Bodyguards rotate hourly, cup-bearers oversmile, and that friendly uncle keeps memorizing your schedule. You survive palace intrigue only to lead wars you didn't plan, waving a gold axe while hoping the archers are on break. Win, and you fund a monument. Lose, and you'd better invent a miracle. Fast. When you finally croak, the fun keeps rolling. Embalmers yank your brain out through your nose, cram you in nested coffins like divine takeout, and lock you in a pyramid that doubles as a burglar magnet. Centuries later, archaeologists stick you under fluorescent lights while tourists buy keychains shaped like your face. So, before settling in, tap like, hit subscribe, only if hieroglyphic chaos is your jam, and tell me your city and local time down below. I'm mapping the empire of sleepy nerds. Dim those lights. Maybe fire up a little fan for background Nile breeze, and let's stumble through the impossibly high-pressure shift of being Pharaoh for a night. All right, grab your reed pen and keep breathing, because the night shift orientation just got real. You step through a palace corridor so polished it's basically a limestone mirror. Every torch throws double shadows, one of you and one of the expectations riding on your shoulders. First stop is the nursery, except nursery here means a gilded chamber where tiny furniture is engraved with spells older than common sense. The cradle, gold-plated, colder than coconut milk straight from the storage cellar. The rattle? A silver sistrum whose jangling supposedly scares away chaos serpents. Chaos serpents are apparently terrified of good rhythm. A priest of Thoth hands you a wax tablet covered in baby-size hieroglyph homework. Just trace the bird, the snake, and the loaf until your motor skills catch up with your cosmic destiny. He drones. You focus, tongue poking out in concentration, and immediately realize if you wiggle the snake glyph wrong, it turns into blighted harvest. Great. No pressure, tiny Horus. Fast forward to age 7. You're marched outside for sunrise practice. The royal astronomer squints at the horizon, then squints at you. Remember, he whispers, if Ra's barge looks sluggish, smile bigger. So you smile so hard your cheeks tremble, and boom. Sun comes up right on cue. Everyone cheers like you personally cranked a celestial winch. You try not to faint. At 10, lessons diversify. 1 hour you're dissecting lotus roots to explain metaphysical rebirth. The next, you're reciting tax quotas aloud while balancing a ceremonial mace on your head. Drop the mace? That's a footnote in tomorrow's omen report. The instructor even keeps 2 ink colors: black for right answers, red for instant apocalypse. Lunch. A quick plate of honey cakes shaped like mini pyramids. But you can't finish. An official needs your autograph on grain storage reforms. Your signature is literally a wall carving. Artisans hover with chisels, waiting for you to pick a flourish. That one extra swirl? Congratulations. Now it reads double the labor force. Somewhere, a province just sighed. Tweens get combat drills. You're 4-foot-something, wobbling under a bronze sword as long as a fishing pole. Your sparring partner is a general's kid who's been power lunging since he could crawl. 1 tap to your shin, and the court physicians rush in like you shattered the axis of the universe. They swaddle your bruised ego in linen, smear you with frankincense, and remind you any future limp could incite rebellion. And, oh, the family dinners. Everyone sits in rank order, staring politely at roast goose while thinking murderous succession thoughts. Your half-sister compliments your headdress. Translation: nice crown. Shame if something happened. Mom pours pomegranate wine, but only after the taster gulps first, just in case someone spiked it with crushed scorpion. Conversation topics banned: droughts, eclipses, and why Uncle Seti keeps pricing funeral plots. Teenage you finally graduates to public ceremonies. You wave from a barge, crocodile-skin sandals sticking to hot deck planks, and townsfolk shout blessings mixed with grocery requests. A sunbeam reflects off your gold pectoral straight into your eye. You blink, missing a cue to sprinkle incense. Instantly, the priest beside you scribbles minor anomaly onto a palm leaf clipboard. You know that note will haunt the yearly harvest audit. Now about romance. Courtiers draft marriage flowcharts like they're mapping troop movements. Potential brides are arranged by political value, bloodline purity, and horoscopes. You're 15, reciting love lines carved by poets who were old during the early kingdom. The girl across from you smiles demurely. She's your cousin twice over. Everyone applauds. You try to picture domestic bliss, but all you see is a genealogical loop. Adulthood lands with a thud the size of a granite obelisk. Coronation Day. They glue that fake beard on so tight you can't frown. The double crown compresses your temples. You swear you can hear your thoughts squeak. Long procession through Memphis. Cattle low, incense clouds, and crowds fling lotus petals that immediately stick to your sweaty forearms. Somewhere in that sea of faces, an assassin could be smiling. You keep waving. Post-ceremony briefing. Sunrise rituals at 4 a.m., flood forecasting at 6, judgment hearings at 9, war council brunch, bring your own translations at 11. Afternoon, inspect quarry outputs, bless newborn crocodiles, and personally approve every brick alignment on your maybe-in-progress pyramid. Evening is for banquets where you pretend wine is refreshing instead of paranoid syrup. And still, when the Nile misbehaves, everyone looks at you. If rainfall south of Aswan dips, scribes draft scrolls suggesting Pharaoh's heart needs purification. Translation: time to sponsor another temple, buddy. You finance a massive shrine, hoping the gods accept store credit. Finally, deep night. You retreat to quarters the size of a small village. Servants layer oils until you smell like cedar chest meets fruit salad. You're allowed 10 minutes alone. just long enough to wonder if any pharaoh ever got to snorkel in the river without a retinue. Then a soft knock. Head priest delivering tomorrow's worry list. 12 entries. 2 marked immediate celestial concern. You collapse on linen sheets cooler than honesty and stare at a ceiling painted with stars that never move. Somewhere beyond mud brick walls, ordinary farmers snore beside simple hearths. They'll wake with sore backs but blessed anonymity. You, living God, exhale, and for one secret heartbeat envy every single one of them. So, yes, being Pharaoh sounds glamorous until you realize the job description is 24/7 cosmic tech support, no downtime, God's watching. Ready to clock in? Great. Just don't sneeze during the flood season review. The astrologer's still recovering from last time. You surface from about 3 hours of dream fragment sleep. Just enough time to imagine a pyramid melting into a giant ledger. When an attendant glides in, whisper-footed, carrying a copper basin of water that's colder than political loyalty. The lamp smoke hasn't even cleared your eyelids, yet the purification team is already in crisis avoidance mode. If you don't start the sunrise cycle within 2 drops of the clepsydra, the astronomer will file it under possible cosmic drift, and nobody wants to reopen that scroll. They strip yesterday's linen, yes, the one stiff with incense and ceremonial sweat, and sluice you down with perfumed water drawn at moonset. Mainstream fact: royal ablutions used natron, a natural soda crystal, to scrub away literal grime and metaphysical funk. It stings like ambition in a paper cut. Quirky tidbit: some courts added crushed lotus petals for divine aroma, which, translated, means please mask the scent of panic. The dressers wrap you in a fresh kilt, pleats sharper than your uncle's latest bribe, and ease on a chest plate embossed with the Bez dwarf god. Because nothing says intimidation like a grinning house spirit guarding your sternum. Historians still argue whether these early morning vesting rites were primarily hygienic or an esoteric reboot of cosmic order. Either way, you're awake enough to know you've already missed breakfast. Joke number 1. You wonder if eternity offers a pastry tray marked for demigods only. Next stop, the private chapel just off the royal apartments, a room smelling of melted myrrh and high expectations. You shuffle in accompanied by a priest who could out-recite an auctioneer. He chants the dawn litany so fast you suspect caffeine was invented solely for clergymen. You lift the miniature sun disk, gold, heavy, still cool, place it on an altar, and give it the mandated 3-point salute, a motion drilled into you since toddlerhood. One angle wrong, and the whole court spends the day doom-scrolling papyrus for portents. With sunrise officially rubber-stamped, you pivot to the scribal alcove where 2 royal secretaries wait beside towering stacks of clay-sealed documents. They kneel, the knee-joint version of flattery, and unroll today's to-do litany. Irrigation decrees, grain tax revisions, a complaint about crocodiles freelancing in fishermen's nets, and a frantic note from the Temple of Sekhmet claiming the lion-headed goddess feels underfunded. You initial each with a reed pen dipped in soot and gum ink. One flourish too enthusiastic, and you've just conscripted 50 extra workers for the next canal. A bell made from a cow's jawbone clacks twice. Breakfast audience. You're escorted into a colonnaded hall where nobles recline on cushions, feigning casual admiration while mentally tallying how many figs you chew per minute. The steward presents a tray of honey-glazed dates, barley bread, and a mug of beer. Yes, beer for breakfast. Mainstream fact: ancient Egyptian beer was nutrition in a jug, not frat house fuel. You sip politely, counting heartbeats until the food taster's eyelid doesn't twitch. Success, no poison today. Joke number 2. You mentally award the mug most trusted confidant, because at least it tries to kill microbes, not you. Court petitions commence. First in line is a reed-thin architect with papyrus blueprints fluttering like nervous wings. He seeks approval for a granary roof redesign. The man behind him, a bronze-tanned war captain, needs extra chariots because Nubian scouts have been making faces across the border. You nod, gravely, pretending the two requests don't clash over the same copper supply. Historians still argue whether Pharaohs micromanaged logistics or delegated while pretending omniscience. You practice option C. Look omniscient, delegate, then pray no one notices the difference. Mid-morning ushers in temple inspections. You ride a litter shaded by ostrich feather fans, the air feeling like a silk-lined furnace. At the House of Life Library, scribes bow so low their reed pens tremble. They present you with a freshly copied hymn in perfect hieratic script. You recite a line, your tongue trips on a consonant cluster, and suddenly half the staff scribbles notes about phonetic anomalies. Quirky tidbit. Scribes kept error scrolls called fault lists, which read like the ancient version of blooper reels. You're probably getting your own episode. Next, you perform the smiting of the set animal ritual, essentially whacking a clay effigy of chaos with a gold-plated mace. Symbolic maintenance, they call it. You secretly call it stress relief. Joke number 3. You consider commissioning a deluxe edition featuring all your rivals' faces, but HR, heresy regulation, might object. Noon strikes with brutal honesty. The sun bakes palace courtyards into cosmic skillets. You retreat to the throne hall for the daily audience with foreign envoys. They present gifts, lapis lazuli beads, cedar timber, a captive baboon wearing eyeliner, which sets off the animal rights bureaucrat lurking nearby. You thank them in scripted phrases while calculating their real purpose: leverage, tribute, or subtle insult. One envoy's ring flashes silver, not gold, meaning his king's treasury runs thin. You file that detail under future leverage. Post-audience paperwork looms, but first comes the ritual meal for the ancestors. You visit a side chapel where hieroglyphs glow under lamplight and offer bread, beer, and beef slices to stone statues of your forebears. Mainstream fact. Egyptians believed feeding statues sustained the dead in the afterlife. Skip a meal, and Grandpa might sabotage your harvest from the beyond. You whisper a quick apology for yesterday's late delivery, just in case. Afternoon drags you to the engineering yard to review obelisk carving progress. The master mason frets over micro-fissures in the granite. He wants a blessing, and maybe extra laborers. You place a palm on the pillar's cool surface, mutter an improvised prayer about stability, in both stone and politics, and hope the gods appreciate on-the-fly poetry. Historians still argue whether royal blessings had tangible workforce effects or just morale boosts. Morale, you decide, is tangible enough. As shadows lengthen, you hold a court of justice. Petitioners range from farmers disputing field lines to nobles accusing each other of goat theft, surprisingly political. You listen, weigh testimony, and issue verdicts flavored with divine authority. Inside, you're dead tired and mildly dehydrated. Outside, you radiate calm fairness. The quill clerks jot every eyebrow twitch for archival eternity. Twilight finally cools the stones. You sponsor a quick incense offering at the temple of Khonsu, guardian of night travelers. The priest thanks you 3 times, each thank you an invoice for future endowments. You smile, thinking of the palace treasury ledger already groaning under renovation costs. Back in royal quarters, you inhale a breath breeze from the river and allow yourself 9 deep breaths of relative solitude. Then comes the dream recorder. Yes, another scribe, ready to jot down your subconscious in case it's prophetic. You fabricate a vision about green barley and jubilant cows, better safe than apocalyptic. As you sink onto the sleeping couch, the fake beard finally detached, you realize the day has been one non-stop referendum on your divinity. Passed for now. Tomorrow's sunrise will restart the cosmic maintenance checklist, and you'll smile like you invented light again. Until then, you savor a moment of unguarded humanity, knowing no scroll will record it, and maybe that's the only true luxury you'll ever get. Night snugs the palace in a velvet hush, but you're not off duty yet. An attendant tiptoes in with the evening brief, a palm fiber folio stuffed with wax tablets, and bows low enough to qualify as floor decor. Apparently, the Nubian envoy you dazzled this afternoon just sent a follow-up gift, an obsidian dagger to slice ignorance. Joke number 1. You hope that's metaphorical, otherwise HR, homicide reduction, will have a paperwork by breakfast. Before the candles burn down, you review the tablets. First, a meteor sighting in the western desert. The astronomer marks it as minor omen, category orange. Mainstream fact. Egyptians tracked celestial oddities obsessively, believing shooting stars could be divine memos. The high priest proposes a modest ritual. Translation, 40 jars of beer and a procession, to ensure Ra isn't cranky. Historians still argue whether these sky events actually swayed policy or simply justified the priest's party budget. You lean toward the latter, but sign off anyway. You dismiss the attendant and slip into the map gallery. A columned room painted with ochre Nile curves and gold leaf gnomes. Torchlight flickers over territories like nervous water. You trace tomorrow's inspection route. Granary, arsenal, boatyard. Grain stocks are solid, but copper reserves are wobbling. Too many axes, not enough ore. Quirky tidbit. Ancient audits used tiny clay tally tokens sealed in mud envelopes. Crack one open, and it's like opening a financial fortune cookie. You break a seal, find numbers that scream shortfall, and sigh loud enough for the gecko on the ceiling to reconsider its life choices. Across the hall, a clerk clears his throat. The royal wine steward, carrying amphorae, and an expression that says, "Please don't die tasting this." You sniff, sip, wait. No bitterness, no almond. Good sign. The steward relaxes so hard you think his sandals might melt. You authorize tomorrow's ration for the priests. Diluted 1/3, they're already ecstatic for fermented anything. Joke number 2. Somewhere, Bacchus is filing a trademark complaint against your kingdom's collective thirst. Mid-evening drapes the palace in incense-scented tranquility. But the war cabinet requests your presence. Urgent. You follow torchbearers into a limestone chamber where generals cluster over a sand table battlefield. Model chariots dot the dunes like toy problems with real consequences. A border fort reports skirmishes with Libyan raiders. Your captain suggests a punitive raid. You study grain transport lines, always the arteries of empire, and approve a limited strike with explicit orders to capture, not scorch. Your voice stays even, but inside you taste iron. Every military decision is a referendum on your cosmic competence. On the way back, you stop at the nursery. Yes, even living gods have toddlers who insist the stars revolve around their stuffed hippo. The nurse bows. Your air gurgles with sticky fig paste and zero reverence. You allow one unrecorded cuddle. His tiny hand grabs your amulet, an ankh carved from turquoise, and for a heartbeat, the universe feels less like a press release and more like a pulse. Duty snaps back. The chief architect intercepts you in the corridor with a wooden scale model of the new temple facade. Columns shaped like bundled papyrus stalks. He worries the foundation stones may sink during flood season. You propose raising the platform by a cubit. Mainstream fact. Egyptian builders used nilometers, stone gauges, to predict high water. You order fresh readings at dawn. Historians still argue whether pharaohs genuinely grasped engineering or just nodded wisely. Tonight, you actually solve for X, and the architect walks away blinking as if he's seen a miracle in sensible footwear. The last ritual before sleep, the sealing of the palace. 2 guards with polished shields patrol each doorway, while a priest sprinkles natron water along thresholds, murmuring spells against snakes and intrigue. You add a personal line, half prayer, half exit clause, invented on the spot. May the night be long enough for courage to nap. Quirky tidbit. Palace security manuals list 8 categories of nocturnal threat. 7 are human. 1 is angry deity in disguise. You're prepared for 6. The deity slot remains a wild card. Finally, you reach the royal repository, the treasure vault, because nothing says bedtime like counting gold like sheep. Scribes unroll inventory papyri, lapis inlays, silver rings, electrum cups. You thumb a scarab seal stamped with your throne name. Its surface catches lamplight like trapped lightning. Joke number 3. You consider engraving "I owe me" on the treasury door. Accounts receivable from the afterlife. The hour grows soft. You retreat to the upper balcony where the city lights shimmer like scattered carnelian chips. A boat lantern drifts on the Nile, and for once, no one's chanting your genealogy. In this hush, you allow forbidden thoughts. What if tomorrow's meteor isn't minor? What if the dagger gift was a warning? What if being a god is just the world's longest audition? The breeze answers by smelling of wet soil and distant lotus. Ambiguous, reassuring, untranslatable. You slip inside, extinguish lamps one by one, small suns surrendering to bigger mysteries. On the writing desk, a draft decree waits. Tax relief for flood-struck farmers. You sign it in the dark, trusting muscle memory over sight. Mercy is clearer at night. Then you collapse onto linen cushions, heartbeat sinking to the water clock's drip. 1, 2, endlessly counting on your behalf. Somewhere the gecko clicks approval. Somewhere the priest finalizes tomorrow's sunrise schedule. Sleep arrives like a courier without credentials, suspicious but welcome. You drift, half expecting a prophetic dream about barley or scorpions. If it comes, you'll edit it in the morning. For now, the palace is a breathing beast finally at rest, and you are its flickering candle, spared, until dawn reminds you that candles, divine or not, must keep burning. Dawn steals in while you're still tangled in halfway dreams of lotus fields and tax ledgers that sprout legs. A junior steward taps the doorframe. 3 polite knocks. Palace Morse code for your sunrise just clocked in. You rise before the sun actually crests, because in Egypt the star waits for you. That's the official myth anyway, and you're not about to let daylight think it can freelance. First ritual, the cold water wake-up. 2 attendants pour river-chilled water over your hands. A third offers a towel woven so finely it probably has opinions. You mumble the dictated mantra. 4 throat-stretching syllables of Old Kingdom vintage, while joke number 1 floats through your skull. If cleanliness is next to godliness, does that mean you're washing your boss? You smirk. The steward pretends not to notice. The high priest of Ra arrives carrying the daily sun schedule on a palm scroll, essentially a celestial train timetable. Mainstream fact. Egyptian astronomer priests divided daytime into 12 unequal hours that ballooned and shrank with the season. Your scroll shows today's sunrise is slated for 6 double drip marks past the clepsydra line. Historians still argue whether these official times were communicated to every village or only mattered within temple precincts. Either way, you initial the margin so the sun has managerial approval. You slip into the morning offering robes, bleached linen, gold pectoral, the works. The crown goes on last, a bimetal headache that weighs as much as a newborn goat. 2 scribes circle, recording every clasp and knot for the archives. Apparently, posterity needs to know whether the left fillet tassel hung 3 inches or 4. Quirky tidbit: one misplaced tassel length once sparked a minor revolt in Dynasty VIII. Fashion truly kills. You stride down the hypostyle hall, columns painted with lotus patterns that glow like low-watt suns. Incense smoke loops through the beams. Priests chant names of gods longer than your weekly audit. A cat sits mid-aisle, tail curled like punctuation, and refuses to yield. You detour. Royalty bends for felines. That's just physics. At the sanctuary's heart waits the solar bark. Gold-plated, the size of a market stall, perched on a sled. Your job. Nudge it 3 finger breadths forward, symbolic propulsion for the sun god's daily voyage. You grip the rail. Push. It screeches like a polite hawk. Everyone bows as though you emitted that transcendent sound. Joke number 2. One day you'll replace the sled's runners just to hear silence and watch priests panic at the missing theatrics. Immediately after, breakfast, flatbread, figs, and a dollop of honey, tested for toxins by a food taster who looks simultaneously bored and terrified. You eat standing because thrones are reserved for public view. Private comfort would be scandalously mortal. Between bites, a messenger kneels with coastal reports. Phoenician traders seek tariff reductions on cedar imports. You note it mentally. Cedar means shipmasts. Shipmasts mean military readiness. Military readiness means you might sleep easier. Unlikely, but the dream is nice. Next, the justice court convenes in an open courtyard shadowed by tall sycamores. Plaintiffs line up like scrolls in a cubby. First case, a farmer accuses his neighbor of diverting irrigation channels. Both present clay models of their fields, miniature canals twisting like argumentative snakes. You listen, weigh, and rule that the canal be split evenly. Also decree a joint offering of beer to Osiris to restore harmony, because nothing lubricates reconciliation like shared booze. Mainstream add-on. Pharaonic edicts often paired legal verdicts with ritual prescriptions, law and liturgy stapled together. Mid-morning heat turns the palace stones into braziers. A servant fans you with an ostrich plume contraption that could double as a small sailing craft. You thank him with a nod, the royal equivalent of a hug, and proceed to the scribal workshop. Rows of papyrus stretch across benches, drying like sun-bleached river reeds. The head scribe presents yesterday's tally. 412 lines completed, 5 corrections, 2 torn sheets, culprit, overzealous cat. You scan for mistakes, find none, and stamp your cartouche. Joke number 3. You consider issuing a decree limiting feline editorial control, but fear national backlash. A delegation from the turquoise mines of Sinai arrives next. faces dust-streaked, bearing parcels of raw stone. They kneel, present the bounty, and request more pack donkeys. You approve 12 beasts and slip them each a bonus ration of dates. After all, beasts of burden carry your afterlife jewelry ambitions. Lunch, spiced lentil stew and pomegranate seeds, consumed while reviewing temple expenditure charts. Your treasury scribe mutters about runaway incense costs. You suggest thinning ceremonies by 1 censer per aisle. The scribe's eyes widen. Cost-cutting is practically heresy. You shrug. Even gods audit. Afternoon brings sport. You practice archery on the palace rooftop range, arrows hissing over the Nile breeze. Each bullseye wins cheers from attendants trained to cheer regardless. But today you earn them. Archery keeps arms toned and rumor mills quiet. Nobody questions a pharaoh who can skewer a target at 40 paces. A sudden shout. Scouts report the Libyan raiders you ordered struck last night have retreated. Captives taken, livestock recovered. You draft a swift tablet. Commendation for your captain. Rations doubled for troops. Hostages to be used as leverage, not trophies. Historians still argue whether Egyptian warfare leaned more toward intimidation than annihilation. You prefer victories that don't need rebuilding afterward. Before twilight, you grant audience to artisans unveiling a prototype obelisk capstone. Electrum gilded pyramidion meant to catch first light. You inspect the polish. It reflects your face like a fractured sunrise. Approve it. Schedule a dedication ceremony. Quirky tidbit. Capstones were called Ben Benet, named after the primordial mound. You recite this trivia aloud and watch an apprentice's jaw drop. Apparently, pharaohs aren't supposed to know etymology. Sunset rehearsal commences. A procession of priests, musicians, and dancers practice tomorrow's harvest festival choreography. You sit on a low dais, throne light, and watch flutes warble through dusty gold air. One dancer stumbles. Her anklet snaps. She flushes, you pretend not to notice, palace etiquette for mistakes belong to yesterday. The rehearsal glides on. Finally, evening, cool arrives like a pardon. You retreat to the Royal Observatory, a modest rooftop nook with star charts pinned against cedar planks. Here, you track Sopdet, Sirius, edging toward her heliacal rise. That means flood season will kiss the fields within weeks. You scribble a memo to granary overseers, triple-check sluice gates. If they fail, you'll need more than prayers to float the kingdom. Night falls. The ceiling of the palace replay. Natron, guards, whispered wards. You linger by a balcony, catch the scent of baked bread drifting up from city ovens, and allow yourself one slow breath. Somewhere below, kids chase each other, indifferent to cosmic balances and tassel lengths. Envy pricks, then fades. Divinity has no refund policy. Inside your chamber, a lone oil lamp paints lions on plaster. You dictate the final entry to your diary scroll. Yes, secret diaries are allowed when you're chief archivist of the cosmos. You note the meteor ritual, the cedar tariff debate, the archery score. 5 out of 6 bullseyes must improve, and add a line. Remember to laugh at dawn. It confuses despair. Lampwick pinched, linen sheets drawn. You surrender to sleep's audit. Somewhere the water clock drip, drip, drips, counting seconds so you don't have to. Maybe the gods read your diary, maybe they don't. Either way, you'll rise before the sun again, because someone has to sign the sunrise release form. And that someone, for better or worse, is the kid who once wasn't allowed to crawl. You barely finish the afternoon tour of granite petitions when the high priest of Amun drifts into the throne room like an incense cloud with eyebrows. His entourage fans out, scribe, steward, and a junior who exists solely to carry a ridiculously tiny bronze gong. They bow so low you glimpse scalp stubble shaped like hieroglyphs. Here comes the temple's weekly friendly fiscal update. Translation: they want more grain, more gold, and a bigger parade so the gods won't feel neglected. Remember that incense budget crisis? This is the sequel. The priest unrolls a brilliant white scroll the length of your last canal project and begins the litany. To maintain cosmic harmony, His Radiance Amun requests an additional 6 bulls, 12 geese, and 47 jars of Nubian myrrh for the equinox renewal rite. You nod, mentally calculating how many tax districts equal 47 jars of anything. Mainstream fact: temple estates in New Kingdom Egypt controlled up to a third of arable land, meaning the priesthood is basically a grain dragon with its own accounting department. Historians still argue whether this economic muscle forced later pharaohs to invent new taxes or just new excuses. You prefer excuses. They're cheaper. You counter-offer. 3 bulls, 6 geese, and we thin the myrrh with cedar resin. Amun loves a smoky finish. The priest's left eyebrow twitches. Progress. Joke number 1 detonates silently in your skull. Negotiating with priests is like haggling with a river. You can't win, but you can redirect the flood. You end the session by promising a personal visit to Karnak next moon. Nothing calms clergy like a photo op with divinity. As they depart, you spot the bronze gong boy sneaking a grin at your quick math. Good. Future accountant detected. You motion a guard to slip him 2 figs. May your generosity sprout a spy among priest ranks. Next stop, Hall of Artisans. Stonecutters chip at obelisk fragments, sparks hopping like gossip. The architect presents a miniature facade for your planned mortuary temple. Gilded pylons, lotus capitals, walls covered in scenes of you taming both hippos and hostile budgets. He asks whether to carve your mother larger than life or merely the size of optimism. You choose optimism. Family politics need no extra chiseling. Quirky tidbit. Some temples hid graffiti from disgruntled workers, tiny sketches of supervisors with donkey ears. You request one discreetly added behind a column. Future archaeologists deserve a laugh. A messenger bursts in. Papyrus urgent. Seal still wet. The granary at Memphis reports weevil infestations. You dispatch inspectors with orders to investigate, fumigate, and politely inform the insects they're late on taxes. Joke number 2 earns a snort from your vizier, who then coughs to hide it. Decorum is allergic to humor. Late afternoon bleeds into the hypocephalus chamber, a domed room where astronomer priests chart star positions onto ostraca. Tonight, they petition funds for a new bronze sighting instrument. You approve, provided they also predict next month's flood crest within 2 cubits. Accuracy is the new devotion. Mainstream fact reprise. Egyptian astronomy was precise enough to create a 365-day civil calendar. Yet festival dates still drifted. Historians still argue whether priests intentionally kept the drift to justify extra ceremonies and extra fees. You think drift equals job security. Smart clerics know to keep the cosmos slightly broken. Dinner arrives in silver-lidded dishes. Roast pigeon, lentils, cucumber salad perfumed with mint. You dine with 2 generals just back from Nubia. They boast of subduing raiders, flaunt ivory gifts, and hint they'd love to expand the southern fortress. Military spending? You chew slowly, tasting the cost. Cat streaks under the table, same audit cat from earlier, reminding you who truly rules supply chains. Post-meal, a hush settles as a delegation of village elders from the Fayum presents a complaint. Priests annexed their floodplains for sacred lotus cultivation, leaving farmers ankle-deep in promises. You listen, drum fingers on lion armrest, and issue a decree returning half the land, plus one scarab seal per farmer to verify future claims. You file the parchment under keeping Mayat from melting. Joke number 3 stays internal. When gods expand their gardens, mortals lose their salads. Night now, but duties linger. You attend the hidden treasury where gold ingots glow like captured dusk. The treasurer nervously stammers about temple withdrawals. You sign off 3 bars, ceremonial hush money, then order a new warehouse ledger initiated in red ink. Red means do not conveniently vanish. Historians still argue whether such double books were common practice. You argue nothing is common when everyone's divine. On your way out, you pause at the courtyard pool. Moonlight scatters across water like shredded papyrus. You recall the steward's dawn tap, the priest's endless scroll, the architect's optimism, the granary's weevils, the invisible cost of incense, and the bronze gong boy's grin. All orbit around you like anxious satellites. You skip a pebble. It hops 3 times before sinking. Small victories. Back inside, attendants unclip the heavy pectoral, freeing your shoulders with a sigh that feels borrowed from the donkey archivist you met in another lifetime. Linen night robes smell of calendula. You breathe once, twice. The diary scroll unrolls. Day 186 of the rising season. Renegotiated celestial cattle budget. Approved Stargazer bronze. Reclaimed Fayum plots. Reminder, bring extra figs to Karnak. Bribes taste sweeter than threats. You add a P.S. Draft edict on tassel-length reform. Citizens deserve lighter fashion crises. Oil lamp dimmed. You lie beneath a ceiling painted in blue stars. Somewhere, priests chant the night litany, praising you by 37 divine epithets. You focus on one. He who balances scales invisible. Nice title. You'll keep it, provided the scales stay hidden. Ignorance is occasionally restful. Sleep edges closer. Tomorrow you wrestle more cosmic spreadsheets, but for now the universe is on silent mode. Cat curls at your feet, an unrequested but binding blessing. If divinity is measured by how many problems await at dawn, congratulations, you're infinite. Dawn reports for duty by prying one thin blade of gold between the shutters and poking you directly in the eyelid. Before you can curse Ra for punctuality, the chief steward appears with a basin of lotus-scented water and the day's first document, a slim ebony tablet etched in alabaster ink. It reads like a bitter poem. Inventory discrepancy. Royal linen stores. Missing 213 cubits of fine flax cloth. You splash your face, groan, and sign the margin. Begin search with palace tailors. Count their sleeves twice. Mainstream fact. Theft from textile warehouses was rampant enough that Ramesses III issued edicts threatening ear removal. Historians still argue whether the punishment was symbolic or enthusiastically literal. Your ears vote symbolic, please. While attendants wrap you in freshly pressed kilts, the vizier lists agenda items in a tone normally reserved for funeral laments. Revise Nubian border treaty. Mediate fisherman papyrus cutter turf spat. Inspect architect's revised foundation stones. Last batch sank like gossip. And divine an auspicious date for your sister cousin's betrothal banquet. Joke number 1 crosses your mind. Nothing says romance like an astrologer with a protractor. You proceed to the morning offering circuit. 3 shrines, 9 incense censers, 12 kneels. At the temple of Ptah, Priests present a clay figurine representing your foresight. You breathe on it. They cheer like you just invented agriculture. Then you discreetly ask which scribe keeps a tally of figurines, because storage space is divine but limited. Breakfast arrives in the royal loggia. Honey cakes, goat cheese, pomegranate seeds. A tame baboon in a tiny collar serves figs, outcome of the menagerie warden's over-enthusiasm. You pretend baboon waiters are normal. Dignity is a performance art. Quirky tidbit. Elite Egyptians sometimes kept baboons as sacred pets, training them to clap during ceremonies, an early furry applause track. Just as you spear a final seed, two quarry overseers burst in arguing about stone quality. One claims his granite blocks hum with cosmic resonance. The other says they hum because they're cracking. You order a stress test. Place the suspect block near the palace gate and roll a chariot over it thrice. If it sings, you'll compose a hymn. If it shatters, they can share blame and broom. Mid-morning, you mount the state litter for a river inspection ride. 4 dozen bearers lift you with that practiced bounce that might as well be a metronome. The Nile glitters. Calm now, but every sparkle reminds you it can rise and rearrange property lines overnight. On the eastern shore, children shout, "Life, prosperity, health." You wave in slow figure eights, the royal equivalent of signing autographs. Joke number 2 whispers, "Wave gently. Tendinitis is undignified in deities." At the harbor, you board your cedar barge, prow carved as a crocodile eating a tax scroll. The symbolism isn't subtle. Neither are your expenses. Inspectors present amphorae of imported Byblos cedar saplings meant for palace gardens. You check the root bulbs. Healthy. Mainstream fact. Egyptians prized foreign cedar, importing it for coffins and temples. Historians still argue whether replanting schemes ever took. You privately bet the saplings will learn to love delta mud or die trying. Across the deck, 2 scribes unfold flood charts. Blue lines crawl up papyrus like nervous snakes. They predict crest levels within 1 cubit of last year. Manageable. You nod, then ask for a contingency. Build temporary reed embankments near the Brewers District. Beer supplies are national morale. Let the granaries complain second. Back at the quay, you disembark into blazing light. A delegation from the workers' village stands ready. Calloused hands, sunburned faces, gift basket of carved ostrich cartoons depicting you wrestling a giant locust. They request extra rations to finish the western mastaba before flood season. You approve half, but add dates for potassium. Fainting masons cost more than fruit. High noon hammers the plaza stones as you enter the consultation court. Today's guest, an oracle from Siwa, eyes rimmed in soot, claiming Amun demands a new bronze mirror for sunrise rituals. She speaks in third-person plural. Creepy, but effective. You promise a mirror if she forecasts next year's barley output. Oracle closes her eyes, mutters, and declares the crop generous as Pharaoh's patience. You smile thinly. Patience is currently overdrawn. Afternoon shadows lengthen, time for the council of war, or, as you think of it, show and spears. Generals lay wooden models of Nubian hill forts on a map table. They want more archers, better sandals, and permission to engrave your cartouche on arrowheads for psychological warfare. You grant sandals. Blisters undermine valor, but withhold arrow engraving. Brand management is expensive when arrows are disposable. Quick detour to the archives. Warehouse smell, papyrus, dust, and ambition. The assistant librarian beams, reports successful trial of your double-entry ledger system. black ink for temple income, red ink for state income. Historians still argue whether double entry was invented millennia later. Apparently, you're early. Joke number 3 scribbles itself. If the future steals this idea, charge royalties. Sunset approaches. The courtiers herd you to the horizon balcony for daily solar adoration. Musicians pluck harps. Priests chant the litany of re-arrival. You raise both arms, pretend your back isn't cramping, and assist the sun into the underworld. Citizens cheer from courtyards. You note which balconies stay dark. Potential descent pockets. Evening feast. Cue the diplomatic circus. Envoys from Punt present ivory combs and a crate of incense that smells like optimism. You gift them lapis scarabs and a promise of copper tools. Negotiations lubricated by pomegranate wine proceed smoothly until a Nubian minstrel sings a ballad implying Egypt owes Punt back taxes dating to Pharaoh Jedkara. Laughter freezes. You clap politely and declare the song historically imaginative. Crisis diffused, barely. Night breeze flutters torches as you retreat to the astronomer's terrace for stargazing. Clepsydra ticks. The chief astronomer lines up a sighting rod on Sopdet, Sirius, and informs you the heliacal rising shifts the festival calendar by 1 day next year. Good. Opportunity to delay tax deadline under guise of cosmic realignment. Before bed, you stroll the quiet garden. Papyrus lanterns glow like captive moons above lotus ponds. Cat patrols the path, tail twitching. You practice the art of doing nothing, a skill rarer than hieratic fluency. A servant appears with a fresh reed pen. Tomorrow you'll sign the canal expansion edict. Tonight you just carve patterns in the gravel with your sandal toe. Each curve a prayer that no fresh crisis will hatch overnight. Inside, attendants remove the cobra diadem, forehead finally free. Linen sheets cool against sun-tired skin. On the bedside table lies a new petition from the Brewers Guild begging for exemption from incense quotas. Apparently, hops smell compete with Chi-Fi. You decide to dream on it. Literal sleep consultation. As eyelids drift, you hear faint temple drums marking the first watch. Somewhere, a priest murmurs that the gods are pleased. Somewhere else, a bureaucrat plots to please them even more, using your treasury. Balance, forever tipping. But for this one heartbeat, the scales hover level, and the living god allows himself a mortal yawn. Your reed hovers a breath above the papyrus when the supervisor clears his throat. A sound like a well-oiled hinge unlocking the night's first sentence. He dictates in measured bricks, one clause at a time, as if loading basket after basket of grain into your mind. For the granary of the western fields, he begins, measure 34 car of barley, received in the second month of Shemu, year 10. You repeat the words silently, letting them settle into your wrist before the nib kisses the line. The fresh black glides out like silk unrolling on cool stone. Thick where the stroke descends, hair-thin where it turns. Mainstream fact. Hieratic's speed made it indispensable for Egypt's bureaucracy. A trained scribe could jot 80 signs a minute, faster than some modern court reporters. You mark a tiny red dot in the margin, space reserved for the heading you'll rubricate later, and slip back to black. Another phrase arrives. Witness names, all consonants and confidence. You give each a respectful curl, though joke number 1 bubbles up. Sign here, press hard, third copies for the gods. You keep it inside. Humor is fuel, but margins are real estate. The papyrus seam approaches like a low stone in shallow water. You lighten pressure, angle the nib, and glide over without a ripple. The seam accepts the ink graciously, proof that yesterday's pastemaster knew his starch proportions. You risk a glance sideways. The young scribe across the aisle is still wrestling with his first heading, tongue caught between teeth. You slide him a sympathetic eyebrow. Solidarity is the night shift's second religion. Supervisor recites totals for beer allocation. Crucial because beer is basically liquid payroll. He pauses, lets you catch up, then murmurs, "Write the measure in both numerals and words. Audit prefers redundancy." You oblige, drafting the numeral strokes, vertical lines for tens, heel bones for hundreds, then spelling the quantity in crisp phonetics. Quirky tidbit. Egyptians called this double notation sikh, binding the number so cheats couldn't shave a stroke and steal a loaf. You wonder if future accountants will invent triple binding just to be sure. Outside, a donkey unleashes the signature exhale you've come to regard as a performance metric. You annotate a mental ledger. Donkey breaths, still on schedule. Joke number 2 drifts by. If he ever skips a sigh, file a complaint with the Department of Cosmic Rhythm. A moth flutters over the red well, tempted by ochre shine. You shield the palette with your sleeve and nudge the intruder toward the lamp. It obeys, dazzled, then veers away unharmed. Proof that bureaucracy isn't the only thing you can shepherd tonight. With the insect crisis averted, you switch reads. Broader nib for the heading. You dip into red, blot once and write day's receipt in strokes so upright they could double as fence posts. The pigment dries into a sunset stripe. Historians still argue whether red headings served purely practical indexing or carried ritual protective power. Tonight, you decide it's both. Clerical bookmark and subtle spell against arithmetic demons. Another dictation block, petition for 2 new storage jars. Standard, wide belly, fired at medium heat. You copy the request, then add the formula, "in good year with favor of the gods." You don't believe amphorae need divine sponsorship, but paperwork worships tradition. The supervisor nods approval. The jar's destiny is now etched. Mid-column, your wrist hiccups, ink gathers at the nib slit, threatening a splatter. You pause, touch sponge to read, and whisper the scribe's lullaby. Flow, don't flood. The reed obeys, exhaling a perfect line. Crisis avoided. Joke number 3 forms. One blot and the ledger becomes modern art. Valuable, but budget non-compliant. Again, kept strictly internal. Hieratic humor is a private luxury. You reach the witness roster. 10 names, each demanding immaculate spelling, or else tomorrow's audit will hiss. You savor Heka Mat Renev. He whose name rules truth. Parents really set bars high. The next man. Bene Nefret. Sweet boy. Probably 47 with 3 missing teeth, but the name still smells like honey. You arrange their characters like chairs in a narrow room. No one elbowing a neighbor. A breeze creeps through the shutter slats, nudging lamp smoke aside. Shadows sharpen, the papyrus gleams. You angle the board, letting the light graze wet ink to check for uninvited shine. One spot glitters too boldly. Sponge tap, knife scrape, burnish, gone. If only life's other mistakes accepted correction with such polite silence. Supervisor clears throat again, softer. A courtesy cough meaning free line incoming. He dictates a personal letter to the governor's clerk, inserted between receipts like a grape in bread dough. Tone changes. Less granite, more butter. He wants additional basket weavers dispatched before harvest. You adjust your pace to match the syllabic sugar, sprinkling honorifics like sesame seeds. Scholars still argue whether mixing official and personal correspondence in one roll was standard or scandalous. You suspect it's standard until someone gets caught. Half column left. You sip water, minding not to swap cups with the ink rinse. Rookie error. Your spine reminds you it's been 2 hours without stretching, but posture is non-negotiable. Read returns to black. You copy totals for castor oil lamp rations, essential for scribes who resent darkness. You note 15 jars consumed last month in the scriptorium alone. Someday, archaeologists will unearth a mountain of empty lamp vessels and conclude literacy burned brightly and fragrantly. The young scribe coughs, a timid plea for advice. You slide him a spare reed cut at a gentler angle. His gratitude shines like fresh ochre. In night schools, mentorship travels sideways, not top-down. Column end approaches. You need a closing flourish. Red ink again, narrower nib, one steady stroke. A rubric bar locking totals in place. Underneath, you plant the mini colophon. Copied with exactitude, Night Watch of Shemu II. You resist adding your nickname for the donkey. Future auditors lack humor. Lamp flicks, water clock plops. You set the reed across the palette. Stretch fingers till knuckles pop softly. Small thunder. First column, flawless. Second breeze of relief lifts shoulders. You blot residual shine, whisper thanks to pigments, and glance at the supervisor. He offers the next tablet with a minimalist grin. Approval in microdosage. On to letter number 2. Black ink wakes first, as ever. A patient pebble of soot and acacia gum waiting in its wooden well like midnight caught in a jar. You drip in 3 drops of water. No more, no less. Because proportions are the difference between calligraphy and catastrophe. The pestle circles, grinding in velvet hushes. A beetle could tap dance on the rim, and the supervisor would still call this silence. Mainstream fact. Egyptian carbon ink is immortal. Archaeologists unroll 2,000-year-old papyri, and the lines still glare back, crisp as new gossip. You intend to give tonight's receipts the same stubborn longevity. When the mixture hits that perfect viscosity, thick enough to coat a reed, thin enough to flow, you lift the pestle and watch a bead slide down its side with the posture of a disciplined soldier. Joke number 1 whispers, "If only tax collectors had such good posture." You file it away. The pestle isn't here for comedy. Now for red. You carve a flake of ochre from the dried cake, its crumbly edge the color of sunset applauding itself. Into the second well it goes, with a wetter kiss of water and a grain of gum. You grind until the slurry gleams like liquid brick. Quirky tidbit. Some workshops spike red ink with a hint of lead to deepen the hue. A trick that makes future conservators mutter unprintable spells about heavy metal contamination. Tonight you behave. Pure ochre, pure conscience. The young scribe sidles over, palette in hand, eyebrows pleading for advice. You demonstrate the dragon spiral. Pestle clockwise 3 times, counterclockwise twice. Lift, breathe, an ancient choreography older than most dynasties. He copies you, nearly drops his pestle, recovers, beams. You collect an invisible mentor bonus and return to your bench. Supervisor requests blue headings for an upcoming temple inventory. That means copper pigment, rare and cranky. You retrieve the locked pigment box, cedar wood, bronze latch, smells like serious money, and open it under lamplight. Inside, a thumb-sized nugget of ground azurite sparkles like a fossilized sky. You scrape off a whisper of the powder. Too much, and the ink grains stay gritty, turning letters into sandpaper. Scholars still argue whether Egyptians preferred azurite or lapis lazuli for official blues. Records hint at regional fashion wars that make modern dye trends look tame. Blue needs wine, not water, for best suspension. Another temple secret. You tap a drop of diluted date wine into the tiny auxiliary well. Stir until the mixture resembles molten turquoise, then test a stroke on astrakhan. The line dries matte, a shy sapphire. Perfect. Joke number 2 tiptoes in. 1 sip for the ink, none for the scribe. Audits can smell tipsiness. With 3 colors ready, your palette looks like a tiny dawn. Black night, red sunrise, blue mid-morning waiting to happen. You arrange reads accordingly. Broad nib for headings, fine for body text, dagger cut for colophons. Each reed receives a microscopic wax polish on its tip. Friction is the enemy of elegance. Time to mix a fresh batch of gum solution. You unwrap the acacia lump, amber translucent, smells faintly of honey and old pages. You shave a corner into warm water and watch it dissolve like polite thunder. Mainstream fact. Acacia gum is hydrophilic. It welcomes water the way scribes welcome rumors. Greedily, then holds on forever. Without it, carbon would flake off papyrus sooner than a politician's promise. A moth circles the blue well, contemplating avant-garde dyeing. You intercept with a reed cap, guide it toward the lamp. It obeys, singes a wing, rethinks its life. You feel like the bureaucrat of moth destinies. Joke number 3. Form 27B-6. Application for reincarnation. Reason for death, curiosity. You test flow on practice shards. Black lines, dense, obedient. Red dots, plump, authoritative. Blue bar, regal, cool as river shade. Satisfied, you wipe the reed backs on linen, aligning points like soldiers at inspection. Ink rituals aren't just chemistry, they're diplomacy. Each batch begins with a whispered salutation. Hello, welcome, behave, because pigments hold grudges. You've seen red sulk into clumps after an apprentice insulted its viscosity. Tonight you compliment every color before dipping. The room thinks you're muttering prayers. Close enough. Supervisor strolls by, sniffs the air, catches the faint tang of wine in the blue well, lifts an eyebrow. You show him the temple docket, specifying azure headings for divine inventories. He grunts approval, scribbles a note on his palm fiber tie. Budget, approved, begrudgingly. Victory tastes like ochre dust and professionalism. Water clock plops a droplet. Shift marker. You stand, rotate shoulders, flex fingers coated in phantom pigment. Across the aisle, the young scribe compares his inks to yours. His black looks thin, his red slightly chunky. You diagnose. Too little gum, too much impatience. A quick lesson in ratios later, his wells gleam. Mentorship level up. You return to your papyrus. First blue heading, Temple Storehouse Code, lands at top margin, a lapis banner. Immediately below, red subheading dates the entry. Then black marches downward in orderly ranks. The 3 colors converse without colliding, a visual choir humming harmony. A breeze nudges the lamp. Flame dances, shadows jitter. Blue can't tolerate soot, so you trim the wick, drop it shorter, give the smoke a stern look. Lamp obeys. You lay a protective shard reflector to boost light on the palette and keep smoke drifting sideways. Crisis averted. Mid-column, the red well shows signs of thickening. Ochre settles if bored. Quick stir with reed butt revives suspension. You whisper flattery. Bright as dawn, stay social. Pigment blushes, or maybe that's just physics. Scholars still argue whether scribes imbued inks with personality or merely pretended to stay sane through long nights. You vote both. It's easier to respect something that might sabotage you out of spite. Ink level dips. Time for the sacred top-up. 2 drops, water to black, 1 to red, half drop wine to blue. Stir, test, continue. The process feels like tending 3 miniature gardens on a tabletop desert. A donkey sigh filters through the shutter. You raise the blue reed in salute. Even divine inventories deserve comedic timing. Moth reconvenes a committee near the lamp. You veto their agenda with a gentle puff. Balance restored. You reach column end and draft a blue divider, a rare privilege. Red punctuation anchors totals beneath. Black signs off with "in good order, verified." You blot, burnish, breathe. Palette inspection. Wells still half full, colors content. Reeds rest. You sip water, taking care not to baptize paperwork. Around you, lamp halos shimmer over benches like small domestic moons. Ink ritual complete, you feel lighter, steadier, ironically cleaner despite fingers stained midnight. Tomorrow, auditors will trace every stroke-hunting errors. All they'll find is harmony in tricolor chorus. Your reed hovers over the first true line like a heron, deciding where to land. Then, soft as exhale, touches the papyrus. Black flows effortlessly, sluicing down the tiny central slit and out onto the fibers in a ribbon so dark it seems to steal lamplight. You begin with the most ordinary magic of the night. The heading, Day Balances for the Western Granary, month 3 of Shemu. Blue arcs above like a discrete horizon. Red dots punctuate the margins, twin lanterns guiding every eye that will travel here after you. The words look fresh enough to breathe. Mainstream fact slides beside your ear. Scribes often wrote from right to left in hieratic, allowing the reed's natural pull. Downstroke thick, return flick whisper thin, to keep rhythm without blots. You feel that rhythm now, a pulse you share with every line already tucked in the archive chest. The letters shorten, loop, release. Somewhere outside, wind combs palm fronds with the same cadence. First joke pops. Congratulations, you've just filed a heading so neat even the crocodiles would approve, though they'd still charge a fee. You grin down into the blue ink. It stays dignified. You turn to the day's deposit list. Names first, always the names, because grain may feed the kingdom, but names feed accountability. You write Menna, son of Hori, bringer of barley, 8 car. Each element gets its costume. Name in black, unit in black, total in red. A tiny slanted cross mark to show the tally is confirmed. The mark glitters while wet, then settles like a stitched bead. You picture Menna wiping sweat from his hairline at this very moment, hoping the night scribes aren't too sleepy to keep his figures honest. A shred of papyrus curls at your sandal. Another cousin trying to chat. You tuck it under the bench with a toe and carry on. Quirky tidbit saunters in. Some scribes used nicknames in internal drafts. Stooped Mararu, Big Laugh Satra, then swapped in formal names on fair copies. You consider labeling Hori annoyingly punctual Hori, but professional decorum wins. Barely. You glide through a dozen more entries. Grain from the delta, oils from the marsh edge, honey cakes destined for festival loaves. The column starts to look like a city street. Each line a doorway, each red numeral a lantern over it. You keep spacing scrupulous, your personal protest against future chaos. Another joke nudges. Someday an auditor will bless you for this neatness, and still fine you for your handwriting. Halfway down, fibers roughen at a seam. You lighten pressure. Let the nib skate rather than dig. A quick blot, a gentle burnish with the knife back, and the paper smooths like a ruffled cat. Historians still argue whether scribes trimmed seams during sheet assembly or trusted writers to finesse around them. Evidence varies by workshop. Tonight, finesse wins. Lamp flame lowers itself as if bowing to your progress. You reciprocate with a wick pinch. Partnership, not dictatorship. Smoke obeys, heading toward the read screen instead of your lungs. The moth editorial board convenes, decides blue headings taste unappetizing, flutters off. At line 18, you change tempo. Witness list. Red introduces, black unfurls. Witnessed by Senebef, the gatekeeper, Mehi, son of Paheri, and Merit, scribe of rations. You angle the reed for thinner strokes. Names deserve elegance, even when written at yon o'clock. Joke 3 taps you. 2 witnesses good, 3 witnesses better. Unless they're all cousins, then prepare for drama. You add each witness's role in tiny rubric initials. G for gate, R for rations, your private shorthand that future scribes will either decode or politely ignore. The red dots here are sparrowfoot delicate, just enough authority without shouting. A small satisfaction purrs in your chest. This list will last longer than anyone on it. Ink routine break. You rinse nib in the side cup to avoid pigment creep, then dab on linen. The dab leaves a faint constellation of dots. You imagine some future astronomer mistaking it for a new star chart. Another breeze slips in, carrying marsh coolness and distant fishhook iron. The papyrus shivers, but your column stands firm. Time for running totals. You shift to crimson, ochre bright as firelight, and write, sum for night tally. 42 car barley, 3 car emmer, 8 jars oil. Red numerals glow like embers, ensuring no one mistakes them for body text. You border the total with slim black rails, ledger fences to keep future edits from wandering in. Now the closing trunk line. Black again, but larger nib, giving the words ceremonial boots. Entries recorded under the full authority of the pair Ankh, in accord with the feather of Ma'at. Feather callback. You glance at the smudge feather on the wall and nod, as if both of you rehearsed this. You sign not with your name, scribal anonymity is its own armor, but with a personal flourish. A slender heron glyph you place discreetly in the margin. Only fellow night shift veterans will recognize it. Inside, joke across centuries. Here arrives debate phrase. Historians still argue whether such personal marks counted as signatures or sly graffiti. Papyri show evidence supporting both camps. You're happy to leave them arguing. Your heron simply stretches its neck and wades onward. Column complete, you cool the ink with a waft of palm fan, taxing your left wrist but saving your sleeve from smearing. When shine dulls to silk, you blot gently. No residue. Success. Supervisor ambles over, eyes tracing line by line. He grunts, the highest compliment. Then he points at the next blank sheet, a polite threat that coffee breaks were invented centuries too late. You flex fingers, roll shoulders, slide the clay weight to unspool fresh surface. The night clock says 2 water drops till dawn. Plenty of time for another perfect city street column. But before you dip the reed, you reset your breathing. 4 counts in, 4 counts out, letting papyrus edges blur until only guidelines remain. You picture the river, the donkey exhale, the frog charm nodding on its thread. The world narrows to ink, fiber, and the quiet promise that numbers written straight help bread arrive where mouths wait. Deep breath, reed tip to black, and onward. You slide the straight edge down to a fresh horizon of fibers, and the papyrus greets you like a blank harbor. Space enough for another convoy of words. Black ink waits, steady as dusk water. You dip, the reed sips. A soft tap on the rim removes any overeager droplet, because blotches are the gossip of ledgers, and you've sworn tonight will be scandal-free. The supervisor murmurs the next stack's subject, tool requisitions from the mason's yard. Practical, stone-heavy, prone to illegible numerals if you rush. You anchor the heading first, red again, bolder this time. Stone Yard Implements, under the seal of the western wall. The letters rise like tiny pillars. Mainstream fact strolls in beside the lamps. Large temple complexes maintained separate supply lists for stone tools, chisels, and dolerite pounders. Such tallies helped track wear and predict quarry orders. You let that truth steady your wrist. Names follow. Bess, son of Hori Adzismith, 3 copper blades. Setka, the younger, chisel keeper, 8 dolerite balls, medium. Red dots flank quantities, tiny guardians ensuring no one mistakes 8 for 3. A simple slip that can topple budgets and tempers alike. First joke appears. Remember, if you can't lift the dolerite, it's officially a paperweight for giants. You restrain a chuckle. Papyrus prefers silent humor. At line 7, you pause. The younger scribe across from you, Ka M. Wasit, frowns at his own column, ink pooling where it shouldn't. You pass him your spare sponge with a tilt of chin. He blots, mouths thank you, and the crisis dissolves. Quirky tidbit surfaces. Apprentices sometimes kept personal blot calendars, counting each rescued smear as a lucky omen. Senior scribes pretended not to notice, but everyone hoped for many blots and few mistakes. You imagine Ka adding tonight's victory to his tally. Your reed reaches a seam again, this one slightly puckered. You switch grip, lighten pressure, and let the stroke glide like a skater over thin ice. The line stays unbroken. Pride purrs in your spine. Debate phrase joins the chorus. Historians still argue whether papyrus sheetmakers intentionally staggered seams to strengthen scrolls, or if it was pure accident of plant width. Analysis of surviving rolls offers evidence for both theories. Either way, you thank whichever craftsman made this join behave. Mid-column, lamp smoke thickens. You lean away, pinch the wick shorter, and add a salt grain of castor oil to sweeten the burn. Second joke. Congratulations, you've just invented night shift perfume. Eau de lamp and soot. Guaranteed to attract moths and questionable compliments. Even the wall seems to smirk. Numbers march. Chisels 12, plum, bobs 2, bronze wedges 6. You tuck a red subtotal at the end of each trio, visual stepping stones for auditors. The reed's chisel edge fattens slightly. You trim with 2 decisive knife strokes, test on a practice shard, and delight in the renewed crispness. Mainstream fact whispers. Egyptian reed pens were often recut every few paragraphs. Modern fountain pen enthusiasts would faint at the attrition rate. Ka clears his throat. Quiet request. He's forgotten the standard abbreviation for dolerite. You trace the sign in the air, a half circle atop a serrated line. He nods, grateful, scratches it in red, then adds a little fish smirk beside it, his private reminder. You pretend not to see. Hieratic inside jokes belong to the night. A lull settles. You use it to stretch wrists, rolling each joint until the faint pop of gratitude echoes up your forearm. Outside, the donkey executes a textbook exhale deeper than the last. Third joke strolls through the doorway. If exhaling were taxable, that donkey could fund a new wing of the pair Ankh. The elder at the water clock snorts. Did he hear that? Then marks another droplet fall. The column nears completion. You add a caution line. Blades to be resharpened at week's end. Return stubs for copper remelt. This is both instruction and riddle. Every tool has two lives, one in stone, one in furnace. You imagine the blades glowing, turning molten, becoming tomorrow's chisels. Continuity filed neatly in red ink. Time for final tallies. You wet the red well, swirl until ochre shines, and write totals. Copper blades, 12. Dolerite pounders, 8. Bronze wedges, 6. Hemp rope, 10 lengths. You bracket the summary with twin rubric bars, ceremonial rails of authority. Then, smaller, a note to self, rope stock low. Advise purchase before flood season. Papyrus tolerates this side whisper. Future, you will thank, present you for the foresight. Lamp flame dips. Oil nearly gone. You top it carefully, mindful of stray droplets. The air trembles with new warmth. Shadows sharpen, then relax. You look up. The frog charm rocks once, as if signaling the night's midpoint. You place the reed down, flex fingers, and sip from the clay cup of barley water now lukewarm but forgiving. Column done, you blot each red numeral. A motherly pat, then sweep the straight edge aside. Sheet curls obediently under the clay weight's hand. You sit back, letting eyes drift to the doorway, where dawn's earliest ash gray sneaks in. Not yet, but soon. Before diving into the next bundle, you take a moment to inventory yourself. Reeds sharp, ink wells balanced, lungs clear of smoke, humor intact. The night has given you another flawless ledger page and only asked for sore shoulders in return. Fair trade. You gather the finished sheet, fan it gently, then lay it face down for final drying. The fibers look content, letters poised like little boats in harbor. Somewhere in the future, another scribe will unroll this, nod at your neatness, and maybe, just maybe, smile at the tiny heron glyph tucked in the margin. That thought is enough warmth to rival any lamp. You reach for the next blank scroll. The supervisor meets your glance and, with a subtle tilt of his head, says everything. Keep going. Dawn can wait. The kingdom still balances on ink. You oblige, dipping the reed once more into the calm, black river. A hush settles over the room, the kind you could wrap around your shoulders if linen ever learned to hold silence. Finished sheets rest in neat little hills along the back bench, their clay seals drying like moons in miniature. It's the closest thing a scriptorium gets to an exhale, and you seize it. You push back the reed bundle, rise, and drift toward the threshold where alley cool still lingers. Night air brushes your cheeks, smelling faintly of date palms, lamp smoke, and the distant metallic tang of the river. Your eyes lift to the slice of sky framed by mud brick walls, and just like that, the ledger inside your skull flips from columns to constellations. Directly above the courtyard beam hangs Sayhed, Orion's belt, 3 bright grains pinned to a velvet loaf. A little higher, the Dogstar Sopdet winks, jittering with heat ghosts. Mainstream fact flares in your memory. Egyptian temple axes often align to that first heliacal rising of Sirius, herald of the inundation. Priests in white robes once took measurements so obsessive they'd shame modern surveyors. You inhale and feel the Nile's future flood rustle under your ribs. Inside, the water clock gives its watery sigh. Plop, plop, precisely spaced. A tiny river in a pot. You wander over and note the meniscus has slumped to the next nick. That means it's halfway between night's 3rd and 4th hours. You mark the tally stick, brush a beetle shell sheen of moisture from the rim, and murmur a quick calibration blessing you half invent on the spot. Quirky tidbit. Certain temple clepsydra featured tiny bronze fish soldered to the inner wall. When the water line kissed a fish's nose, someone shouted, Time for incense. And someone else cursed the fish for being punctual. Back at the doorway, you lean on the jamb and roll your shoulders. Joints pop like soft castanets. First joke. Congratulations. Your spine just learned hieroglyphs. Snap snap is the sign for sit properly next time. A gecko on the lintel glances at you, unimpressed with your comedic timing, then resumes its minuscule push-ups. The supervisor, seated by the bundles, clears his throat. An invitation, not an order. You fetch the clepsydra slate and carry it over. Together you copy the drip counts from wood to papyrus. Start level, end level, total drops, lamp oil burned, wicks trimmed. None of this poetry will ever be read aloud, yet it keeps the bureaucratic stars aligned. Historians still argue whether such night shift logs fed royal planning or simply padded temple archives with busy work. You suspect a bit of both. Kings love numbers, priests love the proof they were awake, and scribes love a reason to wield red ink after midnight. Outside, the donkey shifts, producing a sigh so luxurious it should be bottled. Second joke strolls out with it. Limited edition fragrance, donkey exhale, notes of hay, undertones of not my problem. Ka M. Wasset snickers from his bench, then pretends he was coughing. The elder at the water clock doesn't bother to hide his grin. He's old enough to appreciate a good sigh, equine or otherwise. You return the slate and accept a small cup of barley beer the supervisor slid your way. Air temperature, foamy, faintly sour. You sip. The grain's sweetness wakes neural corners untouched by ink fumes. For 3 sips, you do nothing but breathe and taste and listen to lamps flutter. Your shoulders descend a whole cubit. That's when the elder gestures. Time to flip the clepsydra lid. You oblige, lifting the round clay cap, pouring fresh water to the top line. A tiny swirl forms a galaxy in the bowl, reflecting lamp fire as spinning suns. A thought occurs. What if the night sky is just a gigantic water clock, dripping stars instead of droplets? You park the idea in your mental ostrakhan for later. Maybe it'll become a bedtime story for someone's nephew. Quirky tidbit 2. Some New Kingdom astronomer priests nicknamed Sirius the bird that never rests, claiming its nightly flight timed heaven's own clepsydra. You envy that bird. You've been flapping parchments since sunset. Task complete, you wander the benches, ensuring each lamp's wick sits straight, each pallet lid rests snug. Lamp 5 seems moody, too tall a flame. You pinch, it sputters, you offer a sip of oil, it stabilizes. Maintenance is a conversation. Lamp grumbles, you negotiate. Mainstream fact taps your shoulder. Castor oil lamps produced steadier flames than animal fat, but smelled like someone frying beans they'd rather forget. You suddenly crave beans and regret knowledge. Back near your station, the frog charm swings, bumped by no wind. Only the draft of your passing. Its shadow hops across the wall, enormous, almost comically regal. Third joke croaks. All hail the frog of time, keeper of minute and mosquito alike. Somewhere, a mosquito whines agreement, then makes the poor choice of sampling your elbow. You swat, miss, mutter a curse, supervised, and resolve to burn a bit more chi-fi near the window. Pause. Breathe. Papyrus curls patiently, waiting for the next ink tide. But your wrists request a longer intermission, and for once you listen. You step into the courtyard, sandals crunching grit. The sky, now deeper indigo, shows the faintest smear of pre-dawn silver along the eastern lip. A breeze wanders up from the river, cool as unbaked clay. You follow it to the outer gate, lean against sun-bleached brick, and let the moment stretch. There's a shift in ambient sound. City dreams turning restless. Far off, a potter's wheel squeaks. Closer, a guard mutters to a torch. You whisper a quick inventory prayer. Pens, sharp. Papyrus, flat. Totals, balanced. Bones, mostly limber. The prayer answers itself. You have hours yet before sunlight bullies its way between these walls. Back to work. Inside, the scriptorium is calm, lamps glowing like tame constellations. You collect a fresh scroll, requisitions for temple linens and ceremonial perfumes, the fragrant half of bureaucracy, headings in red, columns in black. You center yourself, read poised, and feel the night settle around your shoulders like a patient shawl. The clepsydra drops another note, plop, and you match its tempo. One line, breathe. One line, breathe. Historians still argue whether scribes synchronized their breath with clepsydra pulses for steadier handwriting, or if that's modern romantic nonsense. You do it anyway. Each drip becomes a metronome, each stroke a ripple. The donkey outside issues a smaller sigh, like punctuation on the hour. You smile into the reed nib. Even punctuation deserves a living mascot. The column lengthens, perfume names curling like aromatic smoke across the fibers. Kai-fi, myrrh, lotus essence, cedar oil. You note volumes, prices, destined altars. You picture lidded alabaster jars cool against priests' palms, lids popping like soft corks, fragrance weaving with hymn. Something tranquil tunnels through you. Maybe the aroma memories, maybe the barley beer, maybe simply knowing the toughest math is behind you. Lamp smoke spirals upward in intricate, unreadable calligraphy. You blink, and for half a heartbeat you swear the characters rearrange themselves into proper hieratic. Incense ghostwriting on plaster. You chalk it up to fatigue and jot a mental note. Possible topic for apprentice lesson. When smoke tries to teach you grammar, it's time for breakfast. First joke of the next section already cued. You reach column's foot, rule a closing bar in red, then a second for emphasis. Twin rails locking the data in place. Everything gleams, orderly, ready for tomorrow's counting fingers. You set the reed aside, dab sweat from your brow, and recognize dawn's first serious light creeping across the floor like a cautious scribe late to shift. Time. You cork wells, fold linen, slide reeds into their roll. The supervisor nods approval. No words needed. You tie finished scrolls with palm fiber, secure them in the wooden chest. Frog charm officiating with a dignified wobble. The chest closed. Latch dropped. Night's work sealed. Outside, the river is turning pewter, hinting at gold. The city will wake, ask for bread, ask for tallies, ask for justice and perfumes and castor oil. And because of your quiet hours, the answers are already waiting in ink. You offer one last glance at the ceiling where lamplight dims against growing gray. Murmur a soft goodbye to the benches and step out. Cool air greets your skin. Down on the quay, a ferryman hums 3 notes you swear you've heard before. Probably you wrote them, somewhere in black and red. You walk toward home, shoulders straight, mind unclenching line by line. The clepsydra back in the scriptorium drips on, counting the moments after you. But out here, you don't measure time. You let it breathe. And as sunrise edges the horizon in mango and brass, you realize you've written enough order into the night that the day can afford a little chaos. Balance achieved, for now. Dawn keeps stretching, cat slow, as you drift along the quay toward the worker's gate. Stone turns warm under your sandals, and the river exhales a steamy breath that smells of fish scales and wet rope. Somewhere behind you the scriptorium shutters thud shut. Night's last punctuation mark. Ahead, dock hands already haggle in hoarse voices over grain sacks, which is either admirable diligence or evidence nobody in this city owns a pillow. Your stomach votes for breakfast with an ungainly growl. Mainstream fact pads up. Most temple staff, scribes included, break the fast with beer porridge. Beer besa, a slurry of barley mash and yesterday's brew, thick enough to stand a reed in. You remind yourself to thank the gods for inventing carbs that double as hydration before noon. A novice baker pushes past, balancing a tray of flatbreads. Steam wobbles off them like visible comfort. You trade a scrap of ostrakhan, a doodle of a donkey wearing a scribe's wig, for 2 warm rounds. Quirky tidbit. In certain quarters, a clever doodle is accepted currency. The potters fire them into good luck tokens and sell them back to tourists from Memphis. Economy loves a joke. Bread in hand, you wander the alley that skirts the temple wall. High above, a painted frieze of marching geese sheds flakes the color of tired gold. You recall yesterday's requisition note, request repainting of processional geese, white, yellow ochre bills. You silently add, and maybe discourage real geese from critiquing artwork. First joke for later. You duck into the courtyard of the baker's shrine, where a low brazier keeps a perpetual flame, offering to Renenutet, guardian of grain. An old priest waves you over, pinches a corner off your flatbread, and drops it onto the coals. It sizzles like applause. Historians still argue whether the shrine's flame predates the bakery or the other way round, he mutters. Half to you, half to the goddess. You nod. Debates taste better with carbs. Crossing the square, you spot Tanetti, the reed seller's daughter, arranging fresh bundles under a canopy. Her smile is sunrise grade, and you feel your spine attempt better posture without permission. You negotiate 3 flawless kalami, each the color of pale honey, promising payment in coin tomorrow. She accepts the IOU, but demands a sample hieratic flourish as collateral. You oblige, quick stroke, loop, flick. Spelling the syllable nefer, beautiful. She rolls her eyes but keeps the reed. Trade complete. A cart creaks by, piled with clay seal impressions from last night's jar shipments. The courier complains he can't read scribbles. You glance, recognize your own rubric dots, and translate 2 jars honey, 1 jar figs, delivered intact. He thanks you with a sliver of dried fig. Second joke whispers. If linguistic support paid commissions, scribes would own chariots. You pocket the fig. Contract law in edible form. Approaching the harbor shrine to Happy, god of inundation, you pause to watch a junior priest flick blue dye into the water, a symbolic incoming flood alert. Mainstream fact. City officials logged these dye rituals to track annual timing. Their papyri form Egypt's oldest environmental data set. You wonder who will read this year's blue streak 5 centuries hence and nod sagely about climate. A whistle splits the air. 2 temple guards escort a nervous courier clutching a reed basket of unopened letters. He recognizes you, mistook you once for a supervisor, and begs help. He can't read the docket strings. You kneel, decode the lashings. 1 scroll for a granary clerk upriver, 1 for a midwife in the potter's quarter. 2 anonymous love notes sealed with amateur scarab stamps. You give directions. The courier departs lighter. Historians still argue whether literacy played kingmaker in administration or merely sped up gossip, you muse, resuming your walk. Next stop, the perfumer's stall near the fish market, olfactory whiplash territory. Mistress Nebbit hands you a small ceramic vial stamped with the symbol for Hebsed, Royal Jubilee Incense. Payment? A copy of last night's inventory so she can brag her wares reached the temple treasury. Fair trade, you hand over a neat duplicate on scrap papyrus. Quirky tidbit, too. Some perfumers lace samples with a drop of castor oil so they linger on linen, transforming scribes into walking advertisements. You tuck the vial away, nose already humming. You finally reach the narrow stair to your rooftop room. 10 steps up, then 15, each rising groan matched by your calves. Inside, a mat, a jar of water, a niche holding reed knives like sleeping minnows, and one battered trunk that smells of ink, dreams, and distant marshes. Sunlight slants in through lattice, tinting dust motes gold. You drop onto the mat, tear a corner of flatbread, dip it into the beer besa jug you keep cool in a shard-lined pit. Breakfast of bureaucratic champions. A pigeon lands on the parapet, head cocked. You toss a crumb. It coos, flutters off, surely to misreport your activities. You stretch, spine crackling. Third joke arrives. Memo to joints. We're writing short columns today. They refuse the amendment. Before true sleep, you pull a fresh ostrakhan and draft a quick letter to Mother, reassuring her the Nile smells healthy, promising to send papyrus offcuts for the neighbor boys' lessons, and including one miniature sketch, a frog on a clepsydra, captioned Assistant Timekeeper reports good progress. You sprinkle a hint of the Jubilee incense onto the shard. Ink dries infused with royal optimism. You seal the note with leftover clay, imprinting your humble beetle ring, its legs worn smooth from years of loyal stamping. Someday you might upgrade to a lion, but beetle suits you. Persistent, practical, fond of papyrus. You stack tomorrow's errands in a neat mental pile. New ink cakes, reed sponge replacement, confirm linen requisition. Then you lay back, arms folded behind head, watching ceiling shadows sway. A gentle breeze noses through the lattice, smelling of river and warm brick. Your eyelids lower. Just before sleep claims you, a final mainstream fact surfaces. Egyptian scribes sometimes called night the ink that writes the stars. You smile, thinking of your quiet lines flowing beneath cosmic ones, black on papyrus, silver on sky. Somewhere out there, the frog of time swings. Somewhere in here, your heart answers with a steady drip. Plop, plop, matching the clepsydra that still counts, even while you dream. Late afternoon tiptoes onto your rooftop like a cat that smells fish and gossip. Heat has unclenched its fist. Shadows finally remember how to be cool. You wake to pigeon foot drums on the parapet and the sweet sour tang of beer besa that's gone philosophical in the jug. Time to trade dreams for daylight bureaucracy. First stop, the dye maker's courtyard, a riot of copper vats bubbling like conspiracies. You volunteer to copy their pigment register, a favor that secures your ration of indigo slurry for sealing festival headings later this week. Mainstream fact. Egyptian blue, calcium copper silicate, is history's earliest synthetic pigment. Its recipe, guarded tighter than a granary key, traveled from palace workshops to Rome and beyond. You jot that down on an ostrakhan for a future trivia flex. A vat burps ultramarine mist. You dodge the splash, deciding blue ankles aren't on brand. Second joke whispers, if color theory paid overtime, your sandals would be marble by now. The apprentices laugh, then accidentally swirl green into red. A small chromatic scandal you promise to forget, for one extra ladle of violet wash. Onward through Spice Alley, where cumin, coriander, and the aroma of hot brass crash into each other like arguing cousins. At stall 7, old Samut the lamp seller waves your reed pens in greeting. He needs a supply note amended. Too few wicks tallied, too many saucers. You revise the column with a flick, inserting a tiny crocodile doodle beside the corrected number. Your silent reminder that lamps bite budgets. Quirky tidbit: some accountants purposely draw animals near edits. If future clerks erase the number, the creature looks mangled, flagging fraud. Medieval emoji with teeth. You turn into the Scribes Guild portico just as a sand-gray cat claims the threshold. It eyes you like a customs officer. You pay the toll, one dried fig, and step inside. Rows of benches line a cool hall. Reed shavings litter the floor like confetti for an introvert's parade. The guild steward, cheeks dusted with red ochre fingerprints, hands you a clay tablet, tonight's roster for the harvest audit. You're assigned column checks and witness countersigning. Third joke arrives. Congratulations, you've been promoted from night owl to counting crow. You file it for later smugness. Out in the courtyard fountain, apprentices rinse pumice dust from pallets. One complains that his reed slit keeps clogging. You demonstrate the thumb roll again. Angle, pressure, release, earning ooze as if you just juggled anks. Historians still argue whether technical tricks like this spread through formal lessons or bench gossip, you say, passing him your spare pumice slice. Bench gossip wins today. The sun inclines west. Its light, thin, and honey-smoked. You detour to the potter's kiln, drawn by the rumble of fresh ostraca tumbling out of molds. Potter Nekhet offers you first pick. Still warm shards, edges sharp as new opinions. You choose a dozen palm-sized pieces. Payment? A quick sketch of his eldest daughter's name in hieratic for her school slate. You oblige, adding a flourish shaped like a lotus bud. She'll brag for weeks. Crossing the granary forecourt, you pass enumerators shouting grain tallies. 87 car even. 87 and a mouse. The mouse escapes. The scribe revises. Mainstream fact drifts up. State granaries sometimes employed feline inspectors. Their daily rodent count was recorded like any other quota. Somewhere, a papyrus testifies that Whiskers the Great saved 10 hecate of barley, one legendary night. Evening trickles in. You head for the river stairs where the audit will unfold. Torches flare, painting water with molten strokes. Supervisors arrange benches in a horseshoe. Clerks unpack pallets. You settle at your assigned table, reed pens fanned like polite daggers, lamp trimmed to disciplined glow. The first boat eases in, hull heavy with wicker baskets. Porters heave loads onto scales while a herald recites figures. You copy numbers, red dot headings, and sign with a beetle stamp that now sports a fresh dab of indigo swagger. A tally clerk beside you mutters that his ink well is sulking. You lend him a drop of your violet wash. He perks up, scribbles faster. Friendship by pigment exchange. Midway through the audit, a flustered novice trips, scattering ostraca across the quay. You and 3 others dive to rescue shards before they meet the Nile. Many survive. A few drift off like lazy secrets. Second, quirky tidbit. Once a document touches the river, it's considered returned to the gods. Unretrievable, unarguable. You watch a tiny shard bob away, carrying half a barley count into divine archives. Oh well, the gods were probably hungry for data. A breeze hops upriver, cooling sweat and flipping lamp flames sideways. You shield yours with a palm, mindful of stray sparks near papyrus stacks. Historians still argue whether most warehouse fires were accidental or convenient excuses for vanished inventories. Either way, you vow yours will not be tonight's footnote. First joke of shift lands. The overseer announces a short break and offers thin beer to lubricate arithmetic. You raise your cup, toast to numbers that behave, and mentally draft tomorrow's hangover column. As darkness fattens, stars emerge, pricking the sky with silver punctuation. Sopdet blinks over the mast tops. The frog charm in your pocket gives an approving wiggle. Timekeeper always on duty. You feel the rhythm of the water clock back in the scriptorium, still dripping in measured applause. Your pen follows that cadence. Stroke, flick, breathe, until the final boat's baskets are counted, sealed, and signed. The steward reviews your columns, nods, scribbles an approval glyph. He offers a leftover honey cake as thanks. You accept, teeth meeting sugar that tastes like commendation. Third joke flutters in. Performance bonus. 0 debine, but 1 calorie bomb. You're content. Audit complete. You pocket unused ostraca, blow out the lamp, and follow the retreating clerks along lantern-lit alleys. Cats patrol rooftops. Distant flutes coil through air like smoke. You cut through the perfumer's lane again. Nebit's door already shuttered, but a thin ribbon of kaifi aroma escapes, escorting you home. Rooftop stairs, 15 down, 10 up. Muscles protest but comply. Inside, moonlight washes the mat in pewter tones. You log the evening's figures on a travel chart for tomorrow's entry, then add one personal line. River steady, numbers balanced, ink nearly out. Remember to barter for lamp black. You sign with the beetle, set it aside. Finally, you unstopper the Jubilee incense vial. Dab a speck onto the lattice ledge. Fragrance drifts upward, merging with lunar glow. A private rubric signaling day's end. You stretch full length on the mat, breadcrumb pillow under nape, sandals off, feet cooling. Before sleep collars you, a last mainstream fact pads across the mind. Egyptians called this hour Meh Katet, the night bark's first glide, when Ra journeys underworld waters till dawn. Somewhere downriver, priests chant to guide that solar craft. Up here, you guide nothing but breath, slow, level, ink-scented. The frog charm rests on your chest, tiny bronze still warm from your pocket. It feels like the weight of one perfect dot, the kind that finishes a column and promises next line will start clean. You smile, exhale, and let the frog keep time while the stars copy their silent script across the sky. Morning unwraps itself like a cautious gift as you drift inside that fragile seam between dreams and errands. First sensation. A faint stiffness in your reed hand, the kind that says you copied more than numbers last night. You copied a small piece of eternity. Second, cool air slinking through the shutter, flavored with date palm husk and the distant gossip of river barges. Third, the frog charm still pulsing on your sternum, bronze warmed by dawn, loyal as any watchman. You sit, roll shoulders, and promise each vertebra a better pillow tonight. First joke, a promise you'll definitely break. Duty taps the doorframe. You rinse face and forearms with the last of the nightjar water, then tip the remainder over the parapet for the thirsty bricks below. Brick maintenance through minor baptism. Mainstream fact ambles up. Some houses keep gods of the doorway statues by their thresholds. Scholars still debate whether these guardians were viewed as literal bouncers for bad spirits or polite decor with theological subtext. You, ever hedge better, tuck a tiny clay bee's figure into the lintel niche before stepping into the alley. Smiling dwarf gods have excellent resumes. Breakfast is barley bread dunked in lentil stew at Aunt Pesichet's stall, fuel dense enough to power a scribe clear past lunch. She asks if the audit balanced. You flash a thumb and forefinger circle. She slips an extra dried fig into your pouch, whispering that figs encourage smooth totals. Second joke. Fiber for figures. The city's arteries thrum. Couriers sprint with bundles sealed in mud beads. Bronze-tipped ox-goad carts stacked with fresh straw for temple rites. You angle toward the dye courtyard to collect last night's violet payment. Apprentices gift you a small amphora, its neck still crusted with blue kisses. Quirky tidbit. A few daring scribes mix leftover pigment into personal cosmetic kohl. You decline, remembering crocodile dung sunscreen fiascos and deciding your eyelids aren't ready for Avant ink fashion. Across the square, the potter Nekate fires a new batch of ostraca. You trade him a haiku short blessing, 3 hieratic signs and a feather flourish, in exchange for 10 crisp shards. Historians still argue whether such barter inscriptions acted as genuine spiritual insurance or simply artisan advertising. Either way, Nekate's grin suggests it's good business. Granary forecourt again. A donkey, yes, that donkey, loiters near scales, eyeing discarded barley. You scratch its sun-warm poll. It rewards you with an exhale so resonant it should be notated in temple hymns. Third joke lands, limited edition donkey exhale, now available in travel-sized amphorae. Nearby, porters chuckle. Rumor will spread by lunch. Inside the office, benches already hum. You greet the supervisor. Lamp smoke clinging to his linen like punctuation, and lay last night's shard summary on his table. He checks fig-smudged numbers, nods, then assigns you to draft the Harvest Festival invitation scroll. 4 cubits of top-grade papyrus, headings in red, landscaped with dancing deities. Your heart pirouettes. This is calligraphic theater, not mere ledgers. You set up at the north window where light pools gently. First, rule margins with that softer burnish technique you taught the apprentice. Then, cut a reed finer than temple silverware. The black ink, brewed fresh from lamp black scraped at dawn, glides like a heron skimming still water. Opening line, may the fields of plenty bend with laughter. Red rubric crowns it like a sunrise on limestone. Mid-column, a pigeon flutters in, landing on the sill with bureaucratic confidence. You offer a pinch of bread. It counters with a white-gray feather. Trade accepted. You tuck the feather near the frog charm. Impromptu quill. Emergency bookmark. Future joke prop. Options abound. By midday, the scroll unfurls riotously, glyphs pirouetting, borders braided with lotus stems. Apprentice Katie hovers, eyes wide. You let him fill 1 decorative cartouche under supervision. He smears ink, panics. You show the damp sponge plus burnish rescue. Error erased, confidence restored. Historians still argue whether mentorship moments like this shaped stylistic schools across gnomes or simply prevented nervous breakdowns. Either way, a new scribe just learned mercy. Heat climbs again. Castor lamp smell competes with cumin drifting from the cookshops. You finish the final flourish, a miniature frog wink set inside the festival date. Private signature riding shotgun with the official seal. Supervisor inspects, stamps approval. He grants dismissal until night shift. Freedom tastes like warm honey on a stone spoon. You wander riverside, scroll safely drying on a shaded rack. Boats glide past. One ferries musicians rehearsing flute riffs. Another carries amphorae marked for Kaifi House. A family of geese paddles in imperfect formation, proving Ma'at tolerates mild chaos. Evening slides down the sky in amber sheets. You climb rooftop stairs, limbs pleasantly heavy. The mat greets you, still hosting crumbs of last night's honey cake. You brush them aside, unroll a blank papyrus slip, and jot personal ledger. Donkey exhale, indigo vat, Katie's progress, festival scroll done, blue coal, maybe. You sign with the beetle, then draw a tiny crocodile wearing sunglasses. Future you deserves comedy. Lamp trimmed low, breeze combs your hair. You place the Bez idol by the shutter, set the frog charm atop the ledger, and stretch out. The sky above is deep violet, the same pigment pulsing inside your amphora. Stars prick through, arranging themselves into invisible columns. Somewhere a heron lifts its knees. Somewhere incense wakes. And somewhere inside your chest, every line you copied hums itself quiet. Slow down now. Let the night close its gentle ledger around you. Picture the Nile at its calmest. Dark water sliding past moonlit reed banks, each ripple a whispered syllable. Each breath you take an answering stroke. Feel your shoulders melt into the mat, the day's tasks dissolving like ink in clear water. Numbers drift away. Names unhook. Even the frog charm, faithful sentinel, softens to a warm, familiar weight. Imagine cool stone beneath your palms, steady and forgiving. Above, constellations thread quiet sentences nobody rushes to finish. Sopdet glints, steady pulse guiding unseen boats, while the lesser stars lounge like friendly footnotes. A breeze saunters through the shutter, carrying faint, kaifi sweetness, hint of myrrh, hush of honey. It folds over you like gauze, light but sure, coaxing every tight muscle into loose, agreeable shapes. If stray thoughts nudge, unfinished columns, blue pigment, tomorrow's festival crowds, let them float downstream. Paper boats surrendered to currents that know their own way. Your only job is to watch them pass, to stay soft and curious as they vanish around the bend. No chasing, no correcting. River takes all. Hear the city letting go. A last creak of wooden oarlock, a donkey settling its weight with one final sigh, the nearly silent applause of palm fronds high above. Even the water clock in the distant scriptorium pauses between drops, honoring this hush. In that pause, place your own heartbeat, steadily, gently, ticking in friendly synchrony. Breathe in through the nose, tasting papyrus dust and twilight. Breathe out through the mouth, gifting the sky everything you no longer need. Again, slower. Let the rhythm slip its arm around you, cradle you toward dreams where ink stays forever wet. Scrolls unroll themselves kindly, and every line ends in perfect balance.